Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 1 of the MiraCLE podcast. My name is Kyle, and we're going to be talking some Cleveland Browns and NFL. Typically, episodes are going to be going up on Wednesdays. That's kind of what I plan to do for this episode, but then I ran into some issues, and it didn't exactly go the way I wanted it to. So this one's going to be going up on Sunday, but in the future, I think I'm going to try to get them out every Wednesday. That way I get them out shortly after the Browns game and then also right before the start of the new NFL week. So because this is a week late almost, or 6 days after the last Browns game, I was going to give my thoughts on the game in depth, but now that, we're moving on to the next game, now that we're moving on to the next game and people already have had time to kind of analyze the game against the Jets and feel how they want to feel about that, I'll just go over it real briefly. So we obviously won 23-3. I think people are right in their thinking that we didn't play all that well. Baker just hasn't looked like Baker from last year, not that I see. And the rest of the offense doesn't look how it did last year either. I don't think that the offense as a whole looks right. I don't know if it's the offensive line. So, okay, here's how I feel about the offensive line. We only have one different guy than we did last year, which is why it confuses me, because Kevin Zeitler was a great offensive lineman, and he definitely really helped us out. But everybody on that offensive line is the same from the second half of last year. So, perhaps I'm underestimating how important that one lineman difference really is, but you have Greg Robinson, Joel Bitonio, J.C. Tretter, and Chris Hubbard all returning from the second half of last season. So to me, and Eric Kush is a veteran guard. He started for the Bears, and he's obviously starting for us now. I just feel like the gap between Kevin Zeitler from last year and Eric Kush from this year is not that big, or at least big enough to have as many offensive line issues as we have this year. Baker's running for his life almost every play. We gave up I don't know the actual number, but we gave up 5 sacks or less in the last few games of the season, or maybe there was a stretch of 5 games where we only gave up 2 or 3 sacks maybe, but something like that. Point is, the offensive line was really good at times last year, and this year they're awful. So I don't really know what's going on with that, but just the offense as a whole doesn't look great. The only people who look good are Nick Chubb, who I don't think is getting the ball enough, and maybe he is getting the ball enough, and I'm just saying that because he's on one of my fantasy teams. But I really don't think he's getting the ball enough, and I think even Freddie Kitchens addressed that in one of his one of his interviews, saying that they want to try to look to get Nick Chubb the ball more. And I think he should, because he's looked great when he has the ball. And then other than him, Jarvis looked okay, OBJ looked okay. But the rest of that offense is struggling. And going into this Ram games tonight, we got to figure it out, because the Rams defense, while they're not great, they're good. And even if they weren't good, we have to be able to keep up with the Rams offense ourselves. So hopefully the fact that it's a home game, it's going to be packed. And, I don't know if inducting Clay Matthews into our Ring of Honor has any effect, but maybe we'll try to play even a little bit harder. I'm not totally sure. But the point is that we gotta get something going offensively, and then our defense is going to be tough because we have a lot of injuries. I'm curious to see what the final injury report looks later today, but I already know so far that Demarius Randall is out, which is huge because, I shouldn't say that, other than maybe Brandon Cooks, I guess the Rams don't have any major deep threats per se, but you're always going to be missing out on something when you lose a safety who's as good as Demarius Randall. And potentially Morgan Burnett too, which means that we'll have 2 backup safeties in there, which does not pose well for our secondary. And then all of our secondary is injured. Actually, Demarius Randall's out. Morgan Burnett is questionable. And Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams are questionable. So I guess you can throw Terrence Mitchell in there, who's a starter. But for the most part, our secondary is heavily depleted. which is not good against. Maybe the Rams aren't pass heavy, but no, I think they are pass heavy, and they have good receivers and a decent quarterback. So in Jared Goff. So it'll be a test. Like I said, I'm curious to see what the final injury report is like. Hopefully, everyone who's questionable can actually play, and that goes for offense too, because I think Rashard Higgins will be back this week, which is huge because he's a much needed third wide receiver, especially when OBJ and Jarvis get the attention they do. That pretty much leaves Rashard Higgins open constantly. So hopefully he's good to go. I think one of our linemen is injured. I don't remember who. Let me pull it up real fast. Okay, so now that I'm actually, somewhat prepared. So on defense we have, or just as a whole, the three people who are out for sure are Christian Kirksey, who I guess I forgot to mention actually, which is also big, but he's being replaced by Mac Wilson, so I'm not totally upset about it. Obviously, Christian Kirksey is a veteran, and he's a key component to that defense, especially that linebacking core. But I'm gonna like to see Mac Wilson in there. I think he's played really well. Obviously, I mean he's definitely going to be a starter in the future, whether it's for us or somebody else. But he's being thrown in there a little bit earlier than I would have liked, especially against the Rams. But we'll see if he steps up. We'll see how he plays. So I'm not totally upset about that, or at least as much as I would be. The opportunity cost there is pretty minimal, I'd say. Njoku's out, of course, with his concussion and his wrist injury. Again, tight end I feel like isn't a major key to our offense. Njoku's Njoku, and he's good, and he's a good end zone target, a good touchdown guy. But outside of that, maybe he'll get you a first down every now and then. I'm not saying he's bad. I love Njoku, and it does stink that we're going to be without him. But again, the opportunity cost there isn't all that bad, I don't think, especially with veterans like Ricky Seals-Jones and Demetrius Harris. So I think that won't be too bad. And then Demarius Randall we already talked about. So I'm just going down the questionables and the people who are out. So those are the three people who are out: Christian Kirksey, David Njoku, and Demarius Randall. Four people. I'm sorry, Kendall Lamb. He's a tackle, but he's a backup, so I don't know how much weight that really carries. So those are the four people who are out. And then the questionables are Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward, Morgan Burnett. We talked about those three. Rashard Higgins, who we talked about. Chris Hubbard, who, as much as it might be bad of me to say, I think I'm okay with him being out. If he plays, great, because then we have our starter in. We have who Freddie Kitchens believes to be the best option available at right tackle. But if he's out, then we have Justin McCray in, who I think played pretty well last week, considering he just got to the team. And I think that's the thing. I think there might be a good chance that Justin McCray, who we signed from the Packers 2 weeks ago maybe, I think there's a good chance that he takes over a starting role sometime towards the end of the season, because Chris Hubbard hasn't played well. He's been the worst player on that offensive line so far. He's too many holding penalties, and he keeps letting people get to Baker. I've watched, after every game, win or lose, I always go back and rewatch the highlights on NFL's YouTube channel of the game multiple times, and those are only highlights. That's not every play, but even on the highlights, he was letting so many people through. I mean, he couldn't block to save his life. So, and he's a veteran. He should be better than that. So I don't know what his issue is. I know he was kind of the only question mark on our offensive line last year, but he's definitely a question mark on our line this year. So if Justin McCray steps in for him and plays well, I'm okay with that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with the starting job after this week. And then just continuing to go down this injury list, we have linebacker Darius Taylor, who is a good backup, a good rotation guy. So if we end up not having him ready to go, then that might be an issue, just especially because of the fact that Christian Kirksey is out. And then we have Sheldrick Redwine, who also might get some snaps if our other two safeties aren't good to go. So that kind of gives us some issues with depth. And then last on this list is Chris Smith, who obviously had his girlfriend passed away a week and a half ago or so. So I'm not, do what you got to do. I'm all for that. I wouldn't be able to play if that had happened to me. So good for him for playing last week. But if he's not able to play this week, that's totally fine with me. You got to do what you got to do. So moving on, and just to talk a little bit about individual players as far as these first two games have gone. OBJ looks good, and I'm glad that he's healthy, especially with that hip injury that he had during the preseason. So it's good to see him out there, and it's good to see him catching 90-yard touchdown passes from Baker. So we just got to make sure he stays healthy. We got to make sure him and Baker are on the same page, and that kind of just goes with the whole offense getting on the same page. So hopefully it's just jitters and a lack of chemistry for these first few games. But he definitely looks good, and he definitely looks like the OBJ from seasons past. And then so Austin Seibert looks really good too, which is awesome to see. What I hate having to worry about whether or not we're going to make an extra point, let alone whether or not we're going to make a field goal. I mean, imagine being a Ravens fan and you have Justin Tucker, one of the most accurate and prolific kickers in all of NFL history. I mean, you can literally sit there as a Ravens fan when he's kicking a 50-yard field goal and be like, oh, that's a gimme. Like, I don't even have to worry about him missing this. Like, I can relax. Like, my anxiety isn't through the roof right now. I mean, that must be an amazing feeling, considering we have not had one good kicker since Phil Dawson. And he retired. Well, he didn't. He recently retired, but he hasn't been on our team for what, a decade? Probably not that long. I forget when he left the Browns, but maybe 2012 or something like that. I mean, that's how long it's been since we've had a consistently good kicker. I'm curious to see how many we've had since we got rid of Phil Dawson. I think we've had at least 6, I bet. But so now we have Austin Seibert, who has made all of his field goals, which is awesome because that makes me feel better. Even if everyone's going to miss every now and then, even Justin Tucker misses every now and then, albeit he misses very rarely and he misses 50-yard field goals. But it's just nice to have somebody who so far is 100%, and it definitely puts my mind at ease. I mean, if we're kicking a 42-yard field goal, it's like, okay, like there's a chance we could miss, but I have confidence that Austin Seibert's going to make that and give us the 3 points. Now, with that being said, he did miss an extra point in the first game of the season. I mean, you go down, you score on the very first drive of the regular season against the Titans, and then you miss an extra point. That doesn't sit well with me, or anybody for that matter, but he's been perfect since. So that's definitely good to see. And then, oh my God, Myles Garrett. So, because I have him here on my players to talk about, mostly because of my beef with him. Obviously, Myles Garrett is great. He's an all-star or an all-pro, whatever you want to call it, and he's gonna go down as one of the all-time greats. But it comes at a cost, and the cost is that he's constantly jumping off sides. He's constantly getting all these penalties and roughing the passer and stuff like that. So, and I mean, he's in his third. He's considered a veteran. This is his third season. And so technically he's considered a veteran, but he's got to clean it up, man. And I feel like most of that falls on the coaching staff and the defensive line coaches it's not like he's jumping off sides every single play or roughing the passer every single play, right? But how many times did he do it against the Jets? I don't know how many offsides he had, or how many offside penalties he had, but he had quite a few. And then he had 2 roughing the passer penalties, one of which ended a guy's season. And I know he didn't do it on purpose. I know it wasn't malicious, and I feel like, maybe not a lot of Browns fans will agree with me or appreciate that I'm trying to be objective about this, but he ended a guy's season because he committed a dumb penalty. And that doesn't sit well with me. And if I wasn't a Browns fan, that definitely wouldn't sit well with me. I'd be really mad about that, actually. But he's got to clean it up. I mean, he's going to get his. He's going to get, a sack a game at least. I don't know about this against this Rams defense or this Rams offense, but he's still going to get his, and he's going to cause problems back there, especially with the rest of the defensive line. But I mean, if we're giving that amazing Rams offense 5-yard penalties twice a drive, once a drive maybe, or even a roughing the passer penalty once or twice in the game, then that's not good, and we're only shooting ourselves in the foot. So hopefully he's able to figure that out, and maybe not even this season, but just moving forward, maybe he's able to get that discipline needed to stop committing those penalties, and the coaching needed to stop committing those penalties. So we'll see, but that's a major issue I have. At this point, if I had to choose between him, so if I had a choice, either he gets all of these sacks, but he also brings the penalties with them, or he doesn't get any sacks and also doesn't get any penalties. So they're basically a package deal. Either you get both or you get neither. I would take neither, because then, I mean, the other 3 guys on that defensive line or linebackers or whoever can get sacks. They're gonna, they're gonna pay attention to Myles Garrett, but anyone else on that defense, particularly the defensive line, can get sacks. And as long as no penalties are committed, then I'm okay with that. And I mean, what's a sack if you were offsides? What's a broken up pass if you rough the passer? So I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority on that. Let me know. But I do think that is something that needs to be cleared up, and I'm hoping he can do it. And again, especially be able to do it. I mean, if he's going to do it against the Jets, whatever, you're going to win by 20 points anyway. But that's something that you especially need to do against a great Rams offense. So we'll see what happens. But another thing, and the last not nitpicky thing, but the last thing I'm going to bash someone for is Denzel Ward hasn't looked good either, and that makes me nervous because he's our starting shutdown corner. Now, his issue has always been his size. He's 5'10", which there's a lot of short cornerbacks in the NFL who are really good, so I'm not totally concerned about that. But he is relatively skinny, and that's why he was concussed so many games last season, because he kept hitting these just huge dudes up top as opposed to down low. And listen, I've played football before. Now, granted, I'm not in the NFL, but I've played football before, and even if you hit a super big dude down low, I mean, you're taking the full force of their huge tree trunk thighs in your head or your shoulder or whatever. I mean, that's going to hurt too. But the point is that Denzel Ward he's a small guy, and there's a reason that he was hurt so often last year. Maybe, although he has a hamstring injury this time around, so maybe that's not what it is. But the point is that he hasn't looked good. He's gotten beat on a lot of plays. I think it was the Titans. It was the Titans that attacked him multiple times, and it worked with a rookie wide receiver who was good and big, but he's looked not as good as he has last season, which kind of rubs me the wrong way. And that just goes back to the overall point of the whole team not looking the same so far as it did last season. And hopefully that changes. Again, I truly do think that as time goes on, we're obviously going to get better. We're going to hit that mid-season form. It just kind of stinks that our schedule is so front-heavy with these next 5 games, which I'll kind of get into a little more later on. But our schedule is so front-heavy with these next 5 games, and it doesn't help that we lost to the Titans as well. That was supposed to kind of be a gimme. But at the same time, it's week 1 of the NFL, and anything can happen. I mean, the Titans just lost to the Jaguars by what, 2 or 3 touchdowns on Thursday night? So I'm kind of taking that first game with a grain of salt, but the fact remains, we still have not looked like a great team, and nowhere near how good we looked at the end of last season. But anyway, kind of to transition a little bit, but also not to transition, I suppose. I'll make a few more points real fast. The whole Greg Williams thing, I'll start with that. I don't know what is with these coaches leaving the Browns team or leaving the Browns and then just trash talking everybody. I mean, Bob Wiley gets fired, I guess. and he immediately trashes Freddie Kitchens. And now Greg Williams is off the team, and he's trashing Odell Beckham Jr. and saying he's not a dynamic football player? What? I mean, he can't actually believe that, right? Everybody in the entire NFL knows that OBJ is a dynamic football player. So I don't understand. I always hate when people assume things are done out of jealousy. Like, oh, everyone's just jealous of us, so that's why they're hating or whatever, you know? I never really think that's the case. I think you can absolutely dislike somebody or dislike a team or have dislikes without it being out of jealousy. And okay, I shouldn't say that this is jealousy. Maybe that's the wrong term. But he's mad. He's doing it out of spite, I guess, is a better way to put it. And same with Bob Wiley, but he's neither here nor there. I don't even know what he's up to nowadays. But Greg Williams, I think, is just mad that he got fired. And so now he wants to put down the Browns. And thankfully, we were able to shut him up by beating his defense by 20 points and OBJ going for 90 yards for a touchdown. And the reaction video on Greg Williams for that was hilarious. Hilarious. That was awesome to see him so frustrated after he said Odo who. But so I don't know. The politics and some of the drama in the NFL irks me, and I can't wait to talk about Antonio Brown, even though that's actually probably going to be a short conversation, but we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But I guess that's all I have to say on Greg Williams. I just shut up and play football, you know? And I don't mean that in like the political sense. Like, that's another thing that bothers me, but we won't get into that. That when people are like, "Oh, just play football. Don't talk about politics." Like, everyone's allowed to have an opinion. So that's kind of my stance on that. But the point is that Greg Williams got what he had coming to him by saying something like that. I guarantee that if Greg Williams didn't say Odell who, that we would not have connected on that 90-yard touchdown pass. I mean, hindsight is 20/20. So you can say now that maybe that's the reason that happened or it would have happened anyway. But I definitely think that played a huge role in Baker and OBJ's mindset. And I'm sure, honestly, I bet Freddie Kitchens drew up that play multiple times. Or they practiced that play in practice, and then he drew it up in the game specifically for that. I think he wanted them to connect on a long touchdown, just to shove it in Greg's face. But who knows? And then, so this actually kind of goes back to the Myles Garrett thing. I'm going to transition again. I have a bunch of thoughts. But Jamal Adams got fined for his late hit on Baker Mayfield. Now, I do not like this. I don't like this at all. I don't know if you've seen the hit, and maybe once I start to get better at this whole thing, this podcast is going to be on YouTube and a bunch of other podcast sites like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But once I start to get better at it, I'll probably start posting videos on the YouTube. And so I don't know if you've seen this hit, but not only do I not think it was worthy of a penalty, and I'm a Browns fan and I want Baker to be protected, right? I don't think this was a late hit. I'm on Jamal Adams' side completely. He got fined $21,000 for that late hit. And if you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube, go onto the NFL's page, look up Browns Jets highlights, and I think it's at like the 3-minute mark maybe. It'll show it, and because it shows the play, it shows a replay of the hit, and it plays the part where they called the penalty for it for 15 yards for roughing the passer. I don't think it was that late of a hit. He definitely laid off. I mean, he tapped him. He shoved him just a little bit, and it made him fall over. But I mean, it's gonna make you fall over when you're rolling out to the left and you throw a pass. I mean, you're going to be off balance. So it's not like he was standing still and he pushed him hard enough to make him fall over. I mean, he barely shoved him, and Baker fell over. And I think because for that reason only, the fact that Baker fell over, they called the penalty, and I don't like that. I'm not one of those guys that is like, oh, the NFL is soft or it's not like it used to be. But because there are rules change and the game changes. And there's a reason for that because more has come out about the dangers of playing football and the long-lasting effects it can have. So I'm all for trying to protect people as much as possible. I have no issue with head-to-head hit penalties or rules. That's totally fine. In defense, targeting or defenseless receiver stuff. But my least favorite rule of all time that the NFL has ever had is that stupid body weight rule for sacking the quarterback. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and I hate it. And last year, it made me so mad. Even if it wasn't happening to my team, even if we did it to somebody else, I still hated it, and I don't want it around. And thankfully, the league kind of told the referees, like, hey, chill on calling these penalties. People don't like it. Try to be a little more loose on calling it, so that's good. But the fact is that it's still a penalty. And the only reason it's a penalty is because it hurt Aaron Rodgers. And if you hurt Aaron Rodgers, you hurt ratings and you hurt your income. Because people want to watch the Packers and primetime games for Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to tell you right now, I could not care less about the Green Bay Packers. I love the team, and Brett Favre actually is one of my all-time favorite players. But the only reason I would ever watch the Packers willingly, like maybe on a Sunday, so the Browns don't play until Sunday night, but I'm going to watch all the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games. The only reason I would turn on the Packers is to watch Aaron Rodgers sling the football. That's it. So he goes down because of if he goes down in the way he did, then yeah, you're going to have the NFL think about that and try to make a rule to prevent that. But I still think it's a dumb rule and it shouldn't be in the game. And that just kind of goes back to the whole, I think we're protecting quarterbacks too much sometimes, especially in this case with Jamal Adams and Baker Mayfield. Like I said, that it wasn't that late it wasn't a late hit, I don't think. I think he hit him like in a good time range after he threw the football. I don't think it was like well after he threw the football by any means, but it was after he threw the football nonetheless. But I don't think it would qualify as a penalty. So, and even if it did, again, he barely tapped him. So, and that plays a factor. I mean, if you hit a quarterback really hard, or especially in the head or neck area, immediately after he throws the football, you might get called for that. Or if he throws the football and then a while later you just kind of tap him or shove him a little bit, I don't think they're going to call that either. And both of those, but it was immediately after he threw the football and he barely tapped him. So for him to get fined on that, I think is ridiculous. And again, I'm a Browns fan and I'm all for Myles Garrett and everything, but there's no way that Myles Garrett didn't get fined for his 2 hits, one that ended a guy's career and he drove them into the ground, if Jamal Adams got fined for barely touching Baker. I'm sure Myles Garrett did get fined probably, especially if Adams did. And he definitely got fined more, but he probably just wasn't as vocal about it on social media. He probably didn't say anything. So, but part of me is just hoping that in terms of consistency, that he did indeed get fined. I mean, it is what it is, but I'll just move on. I'm just going to kind of go through the schedule and then I'll get into some more overall NFL around the league stuff. So obviously the Browns have the Rams tonight. And to be honest, I don't feel too good about it. Maybe, again, I have to see the Browns play more games because these first 2 haven't been good. I do think that they're going to continue to go up and get better as the season goes on, but I don't think they're good enough in only this 3rd game to beat the Super Bowl runner-ups and Sean McVay. I'm not too confident. And I'm an optimistic Browns fan. I'm not optimistic enough to be like, oh, we're going to go to the Super Bowl every year. I try to be somewhat realistic, but I'm usually a little bit more on the optimistic side of realistic. So like this year, I had us going 11-5. Based on how we've played just these first 2 games, and I know it's only been 2 games, but let's say these first 2 games are consistent with how we play the rest of the season, there's no way we're going 11-5. Not a chance in the world. So, and And I expect us to continue to get better as the season goes on and kind of hit that mid-season form where we're playing really well, especially like we did last year. But I don't think that we're at the point in only 3 games where we're going to be good enough to beat the Rams on any level. I mean, this team has been together for a few years. They went to the Super Bowl last year, and they have a great coach in Sean McVay. So I don't think there's any realistic chance that we beat them, but anything can happen in the NFL. And we're also at home, and maybe this is our kind of coming out game for the season where we hit that mid-season form a little early. So we'll see. I was going to say I hate having the game so late just because I have to wait for it. I have to wait, until 8 o'clock for the game. But at the same time, if we were to lose at 1 o'clock or during a 1 o'clock game, then my mood would kind of be ruined the rest of the day. At least in this case, if we lose, I can go to bed at 11:30 and just call it I can call it a night and go to bed and sleep it off. I don't have to be in a bad mood the rest of the day. So maybe it's a good thing. But we'll see. And I'm not doubting the Browns. We have a chance. It's not an absolute loss, but we're gonna have to play pretty tough, especially with the injuries we have. So hopefully we can squeeze out a tough win. Oh, excuse me. And then next Sunday we're at the Ravens. I want to see how the Ravens play this week against the Chiefs, against a real good team, because so far they've played the Dolphins and the Cardinals, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, and with bad defenses. So, and not that the Chiefs have a great defense, but they do have a great offense and they have a decent defense. So, and they're just a good team overall. So I want to see how they play this week, and if Lamar Jackson continues the Pat Mahomes second year trend where he just goes off. But I don't expect that to continue. I think the law of averages is going to hit them pretty hard. Maybe not yet, but soon, if nothing else. So I want to see how they play this week, but they're going to be a good team this year. Before the season started, I thought that the AFC North was going to be between the Browns and the Ravens. I didn't consider the Steelers to be a good enough team to win the North, and obviously the Bengals suck. So I always thought it was going to be between the Browns and Ravens, and now, but even when I thought that the Browns had a slight edge, but currently, I think it could be the Browns or the Ravens, and the Ravens have the slight edge. So again, we'll see how the Browns play over the next few weeks. If they continue to get better, we'll see how the Ravens play over the next few weeks, and if they kind of plateau a little bit. But I don't know if I like our chances going into next week's game either, depending on how both teams play this week and our injuries next week. I don't know if I'm feeling too confident about the game. So, I don't know. At the Ravens, I say we lose that one, but I say we win the home game, which is towards the end of the season, so we won't get into that now. And then after the Ravens, we're at the 49ers on Monday Night Football, October 7th. That could go either way. I think the Browns will take that one, especially if they lose the next 2. I don't think they're going to lose 3 in a row. But the 49ers look pretty good. They're 2-0. And while they're not a great 2-0, they look good. They have a solid defense, and Jimmy Garoppolo's looked pretty good, and he's definitely able to lead that offense. So while the 49ers aren't bad, I think the Browns win there. And then we're at home against the Seattle Seahawks before our bye week on October 20th. Where the bye week is October 20th. We play the Seahawks on October 13th. That one is a true 50-50 ball. If it was away, I say the Seahawks win. But because it's home and because it's the middle of the season, I mean, that's our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, our 6th game of the season. So it's a little less than halfway through. But I think we win that. I truly do think we win that. I think we take the momentum from the 49ers game into the Seahawks game and going into our bye week. I think we beat the Seahawks at home. It's going to be a close game. I won't give a score prediction now, but I'd say maybe a 1-possession game, a 1-score game. But the whole point of that, even if we do win, some of those games and lose some of those games, our schedule's tough the next 5 games. I mean, everybody's talking about it. You guys know that. And I'm just curious to see what this team's made of this year over these next 5 games, because these next 5 games, I think, could make or break our season. There's a chance we could lose all 5. But if somehow we were able to win all 5, I think our odds of going to the Super Bowl drastically increase. And I mean, they would. The more games you win, the higher your chances are going to be. But if we win these next 5 games, I don't think there's a team in the league that we can't beat. I take that back. The Chiefs. I do not think we could hang with the Chiefs offensively. I think their offense is too powerful. Even if our defense plays well, there's no way that our offense can keep up with their scoring. So I don't think that we could beat them. But I do think that if we're able to beat the Rams, the only other 2 teams I would ever be concerned about in the NFL are the Patriots and the Chiefs. And that's it. But with that being said, I keep getting off track. But with that being said, those are tough 5 games, and that's the hardest part of our schedule. Because after that, you have the Patriots immediately after the bye week, which is good because then you have 2 weeks to prepare. But after that, you got the Bills, definitely a win. Versus the Steelers, that's a win, or it could be rather. Dolphins, Steelers again, Bengals, and the only 2 difficult teams that I'm concerned about on the back end of our schedule after the bye week are the Patriots and the Ravens. And we have the Ravens at home. So, like I said, these next 5 games are really going to determine what kind of team we are and how far we're going to go this season because, let's do the extremes. If we win all 5, we're definitely making the playoffs. Unless somehow we beat all those good teams and then lose to a bunch of bad teams, we're going to the playoffs. We'll probably win the division at that point. But if we lose all 5, the implications are that we do not make the playoffs. We don't win the division. We don't make the playoffs, and we do worse than last season, I think. And again, it's only 5 games. Even if we lost 5, we could go 10-6. But I don't know if that's happening. I think there's at least 1 or 2 I think there's at least 2 losses somewhere after our bye week. Even if it doesn't come from the Patriots and the Ravens, there's 2 losses in there somewhere. So we'll see. I'm excited to that's the theme of this podcast episode basically is we'll see. Because it's only been 2 games and the Browns have a lot more football left to play in the season. So hopefully we can let's just take it a week at a time though. Let's just beat the Rams tonight. I think that sounds like a good idea. So now to move on, because this is an NFL podcast, because I love football in general, and which is why I'm so passionate about the Browns. Just going to kind of go around the NFL a little bit. Some news that I've missed out on the past week, but part of me is in a way grateful that I've waited until Sunday to post this and do it, because there's a lot more news that I have to talk about around the NFL as opposed to, recording it on Tuesday and putting it up on Wednesday. There's definitely a lot more to talk about, specifically with Antonio Brown, which again we'll get into in just a bit. So first on the agenda is Eli Manning getting benched. I think that, people have been talking about this since it happened a couple days ago. So, I am a little late to the party, but I do think that it came a little bit earlier than it should have. Here's how I feel about Eli Manning. He's not a good quarterback anymore, but he obviously was a great quarterback, in his prime and back in the day, a few years ago, whatever. He did win 2 Super Bowls, and the first Super Bowl, I know a lot of people say that it was because he had a great defense, and while that may be the case, your great defense gave up 17 points to the 16-0 Patriots. Eli Manning's the one who avoided all those sacks and got out of the pocket and threw all those passes that won the game for them. He was a good quarterback. I think he's, I hate calling people washed up. I don't like using that term. So I won't say he's that, but it's getting time for him to retire. He's getting towards the end of his career, I think. And when the Giants took Daniel Jones in the draft, like everybody else, thought they were crazy. Yet, Daniel Jones is starting in the NFL for the Giants, and Dwayne Haskins is not. He's not starting for the Redskins, and he didn't even look that good in the preseason. So, I think the Giants, what I think happened was the Giants were dumb. I think that they were crazy to take Daniel Jones, and they just got extremely lucky that it paid off. I don't think it was a smart analytical decision. I don't think they knew what they were doing. I think that they just got really lucky that Daniel Jones is a decent quarterback. I'm not going to say he's great or good, but he's going to be a starter in the NFL, I think, for a while. So I'm actually kind of excited to see how he plays for the Giants and whether or not they can get a couple of wins this season. That way they don't have to have one of the top 5 picks in the draft. More quarterback news. We'll actually just kind of stick with that trend. Big Ben is out for the season, obviously. So that kind of, whatever chances the Steelers had left of winning the division or going to the playoffs, I think kind of goes out the window now. I don't know much about Mason Rudolph. He's a big guy, so he's not, missing out on a lot of size with Big Ben. But obviously, he's a young quarterback, and he's inexperienced, and he hasn't started a game of football, I don't think, yet. I don't know if he started one last season, but I'm fairly confident that he didn't. So I'm curious to see how that kind of plays out for them. But again, losing Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Big Ben, that's pretty much your whole team outside of Juju Smith-Schuster and maybe Cameron Hayward on defense. So I'm not too concerned about them anymore. I mean, from a Browns perspective, it's a good thing. I mean, it's never a good thing when someone gets hurt, but obviously it helps our chances, I should say. Not that I'm, excited about it, but it does kind of put my mind at ease a little bit more when we're going to play the Steelers, and just in terms of the playoff race and playoff implications. So it is what it is. Injuries happen, but it's, on one hand, it's kind of a shame that we won't get to see Baker Mayfield play against him, because there's a good chance. I mean, we saw him play against him twice last year, but I think there's a good chance Big Ben retires this year. So that might be the end of the whole Baker versus Big Ben era, as short as it was going to be anyway. But again, it is what it is. Injuries happen, and there's not much you can do. Drew Brees, obviously he's out for a couple of weeks. I think he's going to come back after 5. I think, and they made it sound like he was going to come back earlier than the 6 weeks he was projected to be out. So, and he's one of my favorite players. Plus, Teddy Bridgewater was a starting quarterback in the NFL at one point, but obviously he destroyed his knee, and now he's, a backup at best. But I think between him and Taysom Hill, they can handle it. You got a great coach in Sean Payton, and you have a great offense. You got Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn. You have weapons, so it's not like he's going to be all alone out there thrown to the wolves, Taysom Hill or Teddy Bridgewater. But it is going to be a struggle. You can't lose a guy like Drew Brees and expect to do every bit as well as you were going to do with him. That's just not going to happen. But you only have him you're only without him for a couple of weeks. So it definitely could be worse. But again, losing a guy like Drew Brees is by no means something that's going to be easy to deal with. So here's, in terms of the last quarterback that I wanted to talk about, Cam Newton. So he's out for today's games. I don't know who they play. Let me check real fast. Okay, so they play the Cardinals, and I think that's as good a game as any for a young backup quarterback in Kyle Allen, I think, to start his first game, because the Cardinals aren't great. And, who knows? If he plays well, maybe they look to trade Cam and keep Kyle Allen. I don't really know how it's going to play out today. But what I do know is that the Cardinals are a good opponent to have when your starting quarterback is injured. However, so Cam Newton is in that kind of tier of quarterbacks that I consider to be average. I don't think Cam Newton is a good quarterback. I think he's got good size and he's a good runner with the football, but I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's in the tier of quarterbacks with Andy Dalton, Ryan Tannehill when he was on the Dolphins last year and in years past, Case Keenum. I think he's in that tier of like average quarterbacks that the team is just kind of okay with settling on for now. Like Case Keenum isn't going to win anybody any Super Bowls. Neither is Andy Dalton, and I don't think Cam Newton is either, although he did get close, sort of, if you consider a 2-score Super Bowl game close to winning a Super Bowl. But I kind of collectively put those three guys, and I kind of collectively put Cam Newton and other quarterbacks like that in the same group of people where it's like, they're average at best, and the team is just kind of happy with sticking with them for now. But I think that they could do better. Like Andy Dalton, I really don't think that he should be a starter in the NFL, but you're settling for him. You're hoping that you can build pieces around him on offense and defense that'll kind of get you guys pretty far, but I just don't think Andy Dalton's ever going to win you any Super Bowls. And that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to let me know. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Newton plays his last season with the Panthers. And it depends on, who's in next year's draft and whether or not this Kyle Allen character plays well. But I just don't know if the Panthers are going to be content with sticking with Cam Newton for the next few years to come. Especially when you consider that, now they have Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel's playing well. Their defense doesn't look bad. Their defense is solid, I'd say. So, they have the tools. Maybe not to win the Super Bowl, but to at least get to the playoffs. And if you get the playoffs, you're basically a quarterback away, typically, from going all the way. But I hate everybody, and I hate everything. So maybe that's just me being negative and pessimistic, but I think that's kind of what'll be the case with the Panthers. I'll probably end up being wrong, as I usually am, but you never know. So now the last thing that I want to talk about, the Antonio Brown drama. So, like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I don't like the guy. I think he's a punk. I don't think he should be in the NFL anymore, and I think he's crazy, and I think he needs help, like genuine help, because there's something new with him every day. He's in the news constantly. Like, as soon as he wanted out of Pittsburgh, he got traded, and you figured that was the end of it. He was going to be happy. He was going to be fine on his new team. And then something else comes up. His feet, he has hypothermia on his feet. And then his helmet issues. And then, everybody knows what's been going on with him. And then even after he gets traded to the Patriots, there's still issues. He posted that video of him reacting to getting released. Or I'm sorry, not traded to the Patriots. He gets released and then signed by the Patriots. Even after that happens, he posted that reaction video, which I thought was really immature and stupid. And then that video of him at his doctor's office farting in his doctor's face multiple times. Like listen, I've been ripping it in this room that I'm in right now. But one, I'm not going to do that on the podcast. I don't want you guys to hear me, doing that. But wow, what a professional podcast. It's not really supposed to be. But and I'm not going to do it in someone's face. I'm not going to do that in my doctor's face. Like, it happens, and if you do it once in an accident, sure, fine, whatever. But he was doing it on purpose. Like, that's so immature and gross and disrespectful. And I can't stand the guy. And when the Browns initially thought about going for him, when he wanted to get traded from the Steelers, I was like, please no, don't do it. And then when he got released by the Raiders, I was like, please, definitely now don't do it. We don't need him. And he's gonna require a big contract, and he's gonna be here for a season tops, if not just a couple of games. And he was only in New England for one game. And if New England releases you, that's a problem. And now he has all these sexual assault allegations from, I think, multiple women. I know it's at least one, his old personal trainer, but I guess I haven't been reading up on the situation as much as I should have, but I'm pretty sure it's from multiple women, or from two at least. So, and being the way listen, again, I don't like people, and this is only my opinion, but I think that he did it. If not to, and again, this is assuming that there's multiple accusations, which I believe there are. If not to all the women, or both women that are accusing him, then at least to one. I think he did it, is my point. I clearly don't know enough about the situation, but I think he did it. That's my opinion. That's just based on how I've known him to act. If he's a different guy in person, that's fine, but that's not what I see, right? Like, you can be a different person, but what everybody else sees outside, in the outside world, from a third perspective or a second perspective, whatever, is that you're a terrible person and you're crazy, and that's exactly the type of thing you would do. And so I think he did it, and I think that, of course, while the NFL investigation is going on, no one's going to sign him, and the NFL can take as long as they want with the investigation because there's no pressure to get it done anytime soon because he's not on a team. So I think he's done in the NFL, to be honest. I mean, I say that knowing what I know about Josh Gordon and how many times he's been suspended and banned from the NFL and then reinstated. So I wouldn't say he never plays another down of football, but I don't think he plays the rest of the year, at least. But I don't know. Who cares what I have to say, I guess. I mean, that's just my opinion, but he annoys me, and I think he's a terrible person, and I'm glad he's not on my team, but he's not on anyone's team right now, so it's nobody's problem currently except the NFL's, I guess. We'll just leave it up to them. So that's pretty much all I have right now as far as genuine content goes to talk about. And so I'm just going to kind of run through the NFL schedule for today and give you my predictions. So let's just go to NFL Today, see what pops up. Just going to go through these games and kind of give you who I think is going to win, and maybe not a score. I don't think I'm going to give a score for all these games. That would be silly. So first on the list is Dolphins-Cowboys. Cowboys are definitely going to win that game. I actually honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins went 0-16 this year, 1-15, 2-14. I think 4-12 is their best bet based on how they've been playing. I mean, getting outscored like 102-10 is not exactly a recipe for success. So I think 4-12 is the best that they do for this season. So, but the Cowboys are definitely going to beat them at home, I believe. You got Bengals and Bills Bengals at the Bills. I think the Bills win that one. I think they've been playing okay, and they're at home, and their defense looks good, so I'm going to give that one to the Bills. Lions at Eagles. That's tough because normally I would definitely say the Eagles. But, okay, I just got water everywhere. Awesome. Normally I would say the Eagles, but they haven't been playing well, and neither is Carson Wentz. And I think the Lions have been playing well. I mean, the Lions just beat the Chargers. So I think the Eagles are kind of along the same lines as the Browns, where they definitely have the potential and the talent to be really good, but they're not quite there yet, at least in terms of the season, not overall, because I think the Browns and Eagles are there. They're just not like in that mid-season form. So I'll give this one to the Lions, I think. I think that might be a hot take. I think that they might be the underdog, but I'm going to give it to the Lions. You got Jets at Patriots. Patriots are taking that one, obviously. Falcons at Colts. Falcons played really well last week. But actually, you know what? No, I'm going to give that one to the Falcons. I think the Falcons win on the road. Raiders at Vikings. And these are all the 1 o'clock games, by the way. Raiders at Vikings. I think the Vikings win it at home. I think the Raiders have a good chance. So I think that'll be a close game. You got Ravens at Chiefs. So Ravens defense is good, but it's going to be a question of whether or not their defense is good enough to withstand the Chiefs offense and their attack. I think the gap between the Chiefs offense and the Ravens defense, I think, is smaller than the gap between the Ravens offense and the Chiefs defense. So the Ravens offense is gonna torch the Chiefs defense, I think. Although I'm pretty sure early in the podcast I said the Chiefs defense is pretty good. So maybe it's kind of the offenses are equal and the defenses are equal. But I think if the defense is able to hold the Chiefs under 30 points, that the Ravens win the game. But I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to give that game to the Chiefs. And then the last 1 o'clock game, you have the Broncos at the Packers. Packers are going to win that one at home. Broncos aren't great, and the Packers do look good. So I'm going to give that one to them. Now into the 4 o'clock games, you have Panthers at Cardinals. Normally I would say Panthers, but with Cam Newton being out and his backup starting, I think I actually might give this one to the Cardinals at home, and maybe Kyler Murray has a really good game. Giants at Buccaneers. I think the Giants win that with Daniel Jones at quarterback. Saints at Seahawks. Now that's going to be good. Game's at 4:25. That's going to be a good game with Drew Brees out on the road against the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks win. But that'd be crazy and really good to see, actually, if the Saints were to win that game. I would actually really like that, and I'm going to root for them. But I think the Seahawks win. Texans at Chargers. Normally, I would say Chargers 100% all the way. But they lost to the Lions last week. So, screw it. I think they bounce back and they win. So, Texans at Chargers, I'm taking the Chargers. And then Steelers at 49ers, I'm taking the 49ers. Part of that is me being really biased because I hate the Steelers, obviously, being a Browns fan. But I'm going to take the 49ers in that at home, especially against Mason Rudolph and the depleted Pittsburgh Steelers. And so that's it for the 4 o'clock. And then Sunday night, you have the Rams at Browns. That one I'll give a score for. I think the Rams do win. You know, I'm optimistic, but I'm trying to also be realistic and objective. I think the Rams win. I say they win. I think the Browns play well. I think the Browns kind of get out of their slump from the first 2 games. And I think they play well at home in front of a sellout crowd on Sunday Night Football prime time. So I think they kind of get out of their slump, but I think they lose 27-17, I'd say. 30-17. I'm going to give them the Rams an extra 3 points. I say they lose 30-17. So, you know, not a great game losing by 2 scores, but I think we play much better overall, and we just get beat by a better team. Because sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. The other team is just better. You play well on offense and on defense and on special teams, and you have a good game, but you get outplayed by a better coach, a better team, whatever. And I think that's going to be the case. I think the Rams are just too good, and I think even if we do play well... Now, if we play bad... let me finish my thought. I think we play well. The Rams just beat us, though, because they're too good. But if we play bad, if we play like really bad and we're committing a lot of penalties like we have been, and our defense can't stop them, our offense can't get anything going, that score is going to be really tough. I mean, it's going to be, I think, maybe 38-3, 38-10. I mean, that score is going to be pretty. That score is going to look really bad if we don't play well. So especially if we play how we did against the Titans, which is an outlier, I think, again, being the first game of the season. I think if we were to play the Titans a few games later or in the middle of the season or even the next game, like if they were our second game of the year, I think we would win. I think the only reason we lost is because it was the first game of the season. But, I mean, you don't know. You can't know. Anyway, the Rams beat the Browns 27-17. That's my final prediction. And then tomorrow on Monday night, you have Bears at Redskins. Bears are going to win that game. The Chicago Bears are going to beat the Washington Redskins on Monday Night Football. So that about does it for me. Thank you for joining in and listening in. I'm going to try to post these every Wednesday, like I said, instead of the Sunday before the games start. Because no one wants, people listen to pregame shows and other more popular podcasts. So I'm definitely going to try to not post them on Sundays. I'm going to try to post them on Wednesdays for sure. So look out for those. And if they're not on Wednesdays, then they go up when they go up. I'm busy. So it is what it is. But thank you again for joining in. Try to tune in later this week and every week. And this is Kyle from the MiraCLE Podcast signing off. See you guys next week. Thanks.